Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to follow up from where we left, that is the ratification of conventions. We finalized that process. We touched a little on the national legislation. Today I want to start from the national legislation because that's where really the things get confused. We confuse ourselves. We don't know who is doing what. We don't know what another department is doing. So this needs clarification. So, ladies and gentlemen, basics are more important. If you don't understand the issue from the basics, it is usually confused somehow along the line. So we have finalized the process of ratification. We are in the national legislation now, which is enacted. The convention is enacted by the Department of Transport. As I said before, I am specifically about the maritime transport. So the Department of Transport will enact the legislation following the process I've already elaborated on, that is the parliamentary process, stakeholders and everybody contributing. And if there are anything that needs to be corrected, it is corrected once and for all. So the legislation is passed by the parliament. The president signs and it becomes an act. So which means the bill that is presented to the parliament becomes an act. After that, you will find that the legislation has a portion in it or a section that says the minister will regulate. So that is when the regulations come in. You start regulating, now the minister regulates. During that process, the technical agent of the Department of Transport in this sector, that is SAMSA, starts advising on regulations now because they become too technical for the officers in the department to understand what they are all about. So that's why SAMSA, as a technical advisor, kicks in to advise on the regulations. A policy is also developed that is the mandate of the Department of Transport. All national policies are developed by government. They are not developed by the agencies. An agency like SAMSA will just end with regulations and then they go on to implement those regulations. The Department of Transport will develop the national policy. They will develop the regulations as advised by SAMSA and also the strategy. The strategy is the how part of it. So having said that, we have acts that come out of the conventions, whether it's MAPOL or it's the safety convention, that is SOLAS. Those conventions are implemented at SAMSA level. Those conventions are implemented at SAMSA level. So SAMSA start implementing, taking over the role of port state control and flag state control. That is looking at everything that affects our territory, that is looking at everything that affects our territorial waters as far as port state control and flag state. Maybe let me elaborate on the port state control. The port state control is when the surveyors of SAMSA go and inspect all the SOLAS vessels that are berthing in our territorial waters, especially those that are due for inspection. When they do port state control, they look at the requirements of the convention internationally. If the vessel is carrying the documents that are required, if it's marine pollution prevention, there are documents that are aligning with that convention. If it's SOLAS, there are documents that are aligning with that convention. So all SOLAS vessels need to carry those documents. Remember, the international convention doesn't apply to the national fleet. The national fleet is regulated nationally. All those that are sea-going, that is big vessels, they are regulated internationally. That's how it works, ladies and gentlemen. Now, SAMSA will go on and do certifications. All those people who want to be certified, they will go there, will learn about STCW, for instance, the training. If somebody has been trained on STCW, that is seafaring, the certificate will be given by SAMSA to him. And then we have those people who want to be accredited for training STCW again. So those people are accredited by SAMSA. So SAMSA has got that bigger role. Apart from doing that, at implementation level or at operations level, sometimes SAMSA is involved in the management of salvage. SAMSA is not doing salvage itself. No. Salvage is done by a contracted vessel and its crew. That is, at this point in time, we have AMSOL who is doing that for us. Salvaging the vessels that are sinking, doing ship-to-ship transfers, and all those kind of things, and also saving the crews that are in the vessels, because sometimes the crew is left stranded. You find that the captain is no longer there, and the crew is alone, especially if the ship is in distress or it is sinking. People must be very careful. That is a very, very delicate issue, in the sense that the state now has a responsibility to take care of that crew. At operations level, the Department of Transport is represented by SAMSA. It is SAMSA that is managing that exercise, the salvaging of sinking vessels. Also, SAMSA has got MRCC, an office in Cape Town that is monitoring the movement of vessels and also receiving the reports of vessels that are sinking. So they respond accordingly. On the other side, this vessel, we said it is supposed to be on standby. All the time it is waiting for those calls from Namibia to Mozambique. It must respond, and it must get ready in 20 minutes time. I have already mentioned that getting ready in 20 minutes time doesn't mean it will be on site at that time. It has got to move to the site, taking its own time, right, according to its travel speed. So we have that kind of vessel. So that is where now the national legislation comes in, because at that point in time we have a national contingency plan that tells everybody what to do at that time. Remember, this process is integrated. There are so many government departments and agencies that are involved, especially when the ship is sinking. It's not the Department of Transport and SAMSA alone. There is also environmental affairs that is looking at pollution issues. Once the oil leaves the vessel, it's no longer the mandate of the Department of Transport. It is the mandate of the Department of Environmental Affairs that is responsible for pollution in water. SAMSA's mandate ends when the oil is still in the vessel. They monitor that the oil doesn't leave the vessel. But if by chance it leaves the vessel to the water, now the mandate of the Department of Transport ends. It is the Department of Environmental Affairs. They have got to combat the pollution now. That emanates from the Maritime pollution acts in South Africa, that is Act 2 and Act 6. Those are pollution acts. One of them is saying the Department of Transport is responsible for prevention and combating pollution at sea. That's what the convention says. That's what the act says. Now, at operations level, SAMSA Act has got a shared responsibility between its own mandate and the mandate of the Department of Environmental Affairs. SAMSA takes care of prevention, and the Department of Environmental Affairs takes care of combating pollution. So, this shared responsibility, ladies and gentlemen, has always been a problem. Because when another government department is taking the matter seriously, another department does not. So along the line, you end up not getting the right people to respond to both combating and prevention. It has always been my advice that both combating and prevention must fall under one organization. SAMSA, of course. SAMSA has a responsibility to do both combating and prevention. So, as long as you have this shared responsibility, there will always be problems because one department's mandate doesn't belong to another department. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I want to pass to the National Ports Authority. The National Ports Authority also has a responsibility, especially when there is oil pollution within the port limits. They have their own local contingency plans, which they mobilize when they have an oil spill within the port. So that is the role of the National Ports Authority when there is a pollution incident within the port limit. On the other hand, the National Ports Authority has got a security responsibility. Security in ports falls under the National Ports Authority. Ports have to be secured from terrorists, for instance, from piracy as well. So they look at that, and also they have port plans to counter that. We also have the Department of Defense. Everybody knows that defense is taking care of the borders, South African borders at sea. They are looking at anything that might become, especially piracy in high seas. Apart from their responsibilities, they work together with the Department of Transport as far as piracy is concerned, because the piracy occurs in vessels and also piracy occurs in the high seas. So nobody there, no civilian is found in the high seas, only the Navy that has a responsibility there. So the Department of Transport works with the Navy and SAMSA to counter piracy in the high seas in South Africa. As far as piracy, there are interventions from the UN itself. We know that the international naval forces are spread all over our territorial waters, and especially in the territorial waters of those countries that are in the Indian Ocean. So you know that the piracy emanates from the Gulf of Aden. So those people are looked at. They are monitored by the naval vessels from all over the world, really. So then, ladies and gentlemen, we have the Department of Home Affairs. Home Affairs, you know, that is customs, that is immigration. Sometimes these people, especially the seafarers, they want to enter the port. They must enter the port with the permission of the Department of Home Affairs. They control immigration, they control the borders, whether at sea or on land. So we have Department of Home Affairs to look at the entry to the Republic by anybody. We have SAPS. There's crime at sea. There's piracy. There are people who are stowaways who enter ships without any permission and then with the intention of entering the country illegally. So SAPS is there to prosecute. Once there's a crime at sea, SAPS is responsible for prosecutions. Even the Navy, after taking care of pirates, if they are within South African territorial waters, the Navy will take care of that, but the Navy will not prosecute. SAPS kicks in and takes over the prosecution as per reported cases. We also have the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. This department is key to international issues. You know, ladies and gentlemen, that they have missions all over the world. So those missions are representing us overseas. The international transport is an international area. When the delegations of South Africa are visiting other countries outside South Africa, they must understand that they have another home, the Department of International Relations in that country. Any problem they encounter must be reported to the Department of International Relations. And the Department of International Relations will take the matters forward politically. So sometimes I've witnessed the officers internationally who take over the responsibilities of the Department of International Relations. It is incorrect, ladies and gentlemen. Whenever we are at IMO, we are led by the High Commissioner. Anything incorrect or irrelevant that is happening to South Africa's delegation must be reported to the High Commissioner. For that matter, they should be part of the delegation in the meeting itself, let alone the fact that sometimes they leave, but they must know each and every delegation that is in a foreign country. So that is their role. Now, at sea here, they are also leading that process as long as the international fleet is involved. If, for instance, this is just an example, a naval vessel from America, from England, is coming to South Africa, the first point of call is the Department of International Relations. The Department of International Relations will do the exchange of documents that this vessel will be coming. Everybody involved in a port must know that there will be a vessel that is coming to the commercial ports. So this kind of arrangement is done so that that vessel from another country is given the respect it deserves, at the same time protecting the activities of the port. So by the time it is reporting to our ports, it is already known that on a certain date that vessel will be coming and it will be given its space of berthing. Understanding, of course, that they have their own spaces, naval bases in South Africa, but sometimes they need to berth in a commercial space. So we look at those kind of things. The Department of International Relations is always there for us. I have already said, even if an official has a problem at international level, remember, outside South Africa, you are alone. Immediately, a serious problem kicks in. Officials are expected to go to the mission. to go and report that there is a problem that needs the attention of the leader of the delegation. The leader of the delegation is the High Commissioner. Ladies and gentlemen, the national legislation goes that way. It enacts whatever decisions we have taken at international level, and the country has got obligations as far as the international fleet is concerned, especially if it is in your port. One other thing I've forgotten to mention is that during the inspections of these vessels, SAMSA may detain them. Now, at detention level, there are protocols that need to be followed. For instance, there are embassies here. There is a report that needs to be done to the embassy of that particular vessel. That we have your people here, we have your vessel in South Africa, there is a problem of this nature, so that vessel has been detained. We have your crew here, their vessel was in distress, it was sinking, maybe it has broken down. So what will happen to the crew? So that foreign embassy must be involved because these people have to be repatriated. So these are the obligations, ladies and gentlemen, that, of course, examples of obligations, there are many. A country has to abide with, and that is an expectation from the international community. Even if there is a pollution, a big pollution, that attracts public interest. So that's why the Minister of the Department of Transport must be involved in the whole thing, because now the image of the country must be protected. Ladies and gentlemen, as far as the national legislation is concerned, I will end there. Next time I will take another topic. I am doing this so that young people must understand what is happening at sea, and they must not be scared to go and work at sea. It is a very interesting area in whatever form you come with. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.